everybody, welcome back to OPETH Music Theory. Thank you for joining me yet again. Today we're taking a look at paragraph 3 off the Last Will and Testament by OPETH. Off the Last Will and Testament by OPETH. Choking on my words already. So let's get a little feel for this introduction here. We are in standard tuning. A lot of odd times in this song. I'm sure you guys can feel the odd times. You know, you're in 4/4 essentially, but there's 5/4, 7/8. There's a lot of 5/4 and 7/8, 6/8, 5/8. So I'm going to be going through some of those sections in addition to the harmonic analysis portion. We are loosely in E minor / E Phrygian / E Phrygian dominant. It's kind of a buffet of all three, as with most OPETH songs. We usually incorporate at least two of those. So this introduction here, essentially the first two notes are a B flat to a B, and then in the measure that follows, we then bring in the root note E. So we're dealing with like an E as the 1, the B as the 5, and the B flat as the flat 5, also known as the tritone, okay? That pretty much continues for a bit. They also throw in some C's, C sharps, D sharps, and E's, which kind of outlines more of a combination of like E major with the C sharp, but also E harmonic minor with the D sharp. It's all over the place. We're in E essentially, but we're throwing in pretty much all the notes you possibly can. It's like E chromatic. If you just want to like break it down into its smallest parts, make it as simple as possible, OPETH writes songs in E chromatic, okay? That's basically what this is. Not going to get too nitpicky. Let's check out the next section. This part brings in some odd times. Let me give you a little lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. This is the Crazy Dream Theater section. A lot of 4/4 and 7/8 and 5/8 going back and forth. Essentially what we have here, note-wise, is more of the same, still rooted in E / E Phrygian dominant / E something, using every possible note they can in the most interesting patterns and rhythms, as they do with everything. I don't really want this to be like every other video, because it can get monotonous. I'm not going to do this entire thing. I'm scrolling ahead a little bit. We're just going to look for something a bit more interesting. I like this section coming out of this tail end into the section here. Here we go. Alright, so basically we're rooted in E here. We're starting off with octave E's, and then we're throwing in a D as the 7, an A as the 4. We're throwing in a B flat as your tritone, and then we have a G, which is the 3. So very much E minor without the second, but with the tritone. And then the next portion of this, they kind of infuse a little bit of a Phrygian vibe into it because we have the F involved. So that would be this part. That's more of a Phrygian. We still have the B flat as the flat 5, aka tritone, but we have the F, which is the flat 2, which is that Phrygian vibe. There are no G sharps in that section. That's why I'm hesitant to call it Phrygian dominant. So we're just going to go straight Phrygian on that. And then it's pretty much more of the same. The next section kind of toggles between 6/8 and 4/4. We're dealing with the notes E, F sharp, and G, but it's the order and the toggling between time signatures that makes this very interesting. So let's get a glimpse of this. Coming off the tail of this, call that the Meshuggah section. Very dizzying. Again, 6/8 and 4/4 back and forth. The notes being used again, E, F sharp, and G. So like a 1, 2, 3 in E minor. But it's the displacement or the voicing of the chord across the fretboard that's giving it its very unique. It's not all linear. It's very spread out. And then they also do the combinations G, F sharp, and G, which is very jarring because that's a half-step relationship, and that kind of goes back and forth. And then we have the F sharp to the G to the F sharp, rocking some F sharps, more Gs, more F sharps. So very much E minor for this section. Kind of rehash some old themes. Let's take a look at this one. The doo-ba-doo, doo-ba-doo, doo-ba-doo. That's going to be F sharp, and G. So that is very cool. F sharp octaves first, but they're like very far apart. And then the G sharp, or the G rather, next to the F sharp. So it's like an F sharp Phrygian, but done with octaves. So F sharp, G. G being the flat 2. So that's cool. So we're basically like, this is kind of like a Metallica style chord transition or chord modulation, where we're going, instead of being voiced in E, we're now voiced up a full step on the F sharp, but we're continuing with that Phrygian vibe by doing that flat 2. Very interesting stuff. All right, then we get to the last little chunk of the song here. You have these notes. All we're doing here, spacing the notes pretty far apart, we're dealing with like an A and an E flat, which is a tritone. So the whole section's based on the tritone. And then this section gets a little more involved. So those notes, I mean, you've got a tritone relationship between the first two, you've got a half-step relationship between the second two, then you have a major third relationship between the third two, and another major relationship between the second two. So they're kind of grouped off into groups of 2 notes that have a specific intervallic relationship. And then the last one is the tritone relationship, which is this. So that's more tritone. And then we get to this chord at the end. Let me see where that was. So it's E. That's E. No, wait, that's A. All right, so the last thing I want to mention is there's a really unique chord at the end of this tritone section. We're doing an A to an E flat. Ready? So here we go. We have A, E flat, A, E flat, A, E flat. Right there we have a chord. It's 3 notes. It's A, E flat, and E. Which, if I were to play those on piano, A, E flat, and E. They're doing all 3 at the same time. Now, if you're just going to look at that based on the 3 notes, the easiest way to describe that would be like an A power chord with the A and the E, and then with the sharp 4, I'm gonna call it like a Lydian triad, for lack of a better description. I love that idea, the Lydian triad. What is a Lydian interval but a flat 5 or a sharp 4? Same thing, right? So it makes perfect sense that they start off the passage with the tritone and then play all 3 together for the Lydian triad. So the tritone interval then gets kind of like combined to create the Lydian triad at the very end. And that's pretty much it. We rock out on some open E's and finally some E power chords to end the song. That's it, guys. I hope that was interesting and informative for you. The next one I do will most likely be paragraph 4. I want to get through this whole album before summer 2025 hits. That'll be my goal. So thank you all for watching. If you're still here, first of all, thank you. Second of all, hit the like button, because you're still here. You might as well give me a little advantage.